however, unable to generate much wind over the deck, which made it less useful. It was also small, limiting the number of planes that could be carried. After World War I, for various reasons, all major navies began converting battle cruisers to aircraft carriers. Battle cruisers had always been intended as the scouts of the fleet, and it was now clear that by carrying aircraft they could do it much better. The guns were removed and replaced with a flight deck. The USN built the Lexington and Saratoga, the IJN built the Akagi and Kaga, while the RN built the Furious, Glorious, and Courageous. These were large, fast, and powerful ships, the first fleet carriers. They were larger than many battleships of the day, clearly indicating that the aircraft carrier was becoming something that mattered, and that major navies were ready to invest large sums of money in them. They were still very much subordinate to the battleship, however, an adjunct to the battle fleet, with the role limited to scouting and perhaps raiding. The torpedo had become a major weapon. The problem with the torpedo was always how to get close enough to the enemy battleships. The torpedo-carrying bomber presented a solution to that problem. The aircraft carrier now threatened the battleship. In a fleet exercise in 1929, Saratoga was detached from the main fleet and launched a surprise attack against the Panama Canal. The attack was a success. It was now obvious that naval aviation was something to be reckoned with, even at the strategic level. Before Pearl Harbor, the Japanese pioneered the concept of using all the carriers together as one large force, intended for massive strikes with strategic implications. They became the first to have their carriers steaming together as one large formation. A very technologically complex form of warfare. This new type of naval warfare gave rise to a whole new set of problems involving a range of evolving technologies, including navigation techniques suitable for aircraft, radio communications, landing on and taking off from a small flight deck, managing large numbers of aircraft on the flight deck and in the hangar. There were also the very considerable issues involved with formation flying and executing coordinated attacks. Torpedoes and torpedo bombing techniques were developed, as were dive bombing techniques, initially seen as a very radical form of attack. Simply finding the enemy was a major issue. It was revolutionized by the introduction of radar. All this development went on for many years without any opportunity for testing within a battle situation. Every time a new and more powerful aircraft type was introduced, the goalposts moved. When the war started, nobody really knew what would happen. Nobody really knew anything about carrier operations. There were lots of theories and opinions, sometimes strongly expressed, but at the end of the day nobody could know for sure how it would all work out in actual combat. Short but interesting lives. As aircraft engine development continued, striking power and range increased dramatically. As a carrier needed to be fast, both for its intended role as a scout and to facilitate flight operations, protection did not keep pace. Carriers evolved into eggshells armed with hammers, destined for short but interesting lives. A battleship action was fairly simple. Pound away at the enemy line until one side withdraws. The only complication was the desire to cross the other fleet's T. It had been like that for centuries. A carrier battle was different. It was less of a slugging match and much more of a game of poker. The enemy was never seen. Everything depended on the scouting report. These were often unreliable. Commanders often had to make their decisions based on fragmentary information. Then there was the considerable time it took from when a decision was made until something actually happened. Preparing and launching a strike took time. There was also a long time to wait until the strike actually reached its target, if any was found. A strike that successfully engaged the enemy carriers was almost certain to cause heavy damage, in many cases sinking most of them. Adding all these elements together, we have a very deadly game indeed. Let us say the commanders involved occasionally had some very stressful days at the office. Differently and better? This book starts out by examining the tools and building blocks of carrier operations. It then examines major carrier battles with a focus on